The elections that have changed the political landscape in Austria, issues in schools with the language barrier, rising rental prices, and interesting opportunities for investors are just a small part of what we will discuss today. We will analyze how the decisions of the European Union affect each of us and what the recent victory of the Freedom Party means for the country and all of Europe. You will also learn which professions are currently in shortage and why Austrian supermarkets have disappointed customers. Today we have a unique selection of news for September 2024 that will surely not leave you indifferent. Watch until the end so you don't miss important details and the most interesting moments of this month. Parliamentary elections were held in Austria, where the right-wing party led by Herbert Kickl achieved a decisive victory with 29.2% of the votes. The Austrian People's Party came in second with 26.5%. The Social Democrats rounded out the top three with 21.1%. Following them are the Liberal People's Party and the Liberal Forum. Next are the Liberal People's Party, the Liberal Forum, and the Greens, which received 9.8% of the votes. The victory of this party raises concerns both among the population and in the international community. The leader of the Freedom Party, Herbert Kickl, intends to stop accepting asylum applications from citizens of several countries and proposes a concept of remigration for foreigners. This raises debates about the legal and ethical aspects, as this situation has already been identified as right-wing in official reports. The current chairman of the Austrian parliament is demanding that Kickl find a coalition partner, as the Social Democrats and Liberals refuse to cooperate with his party. However, an alliance with the Austrian Freedom Party, FP, may be possible. This will provide Kickl with a chance to occupy a higher political position. Political scientists emphasize that the election results could have serious consequences for Austria's politics and its position in the European Union. The Austrian People's Party, which may become Herbert Kickl's main coalition partner, is already showing its positions that could exacerbate tensions in relations with Brussels. The formation of a new government promises to be difficult, and complex coalition negotiations are scheduled for the coming weeks, with the main task being the adherence to democratic values. Tell me in the comments what you think about this. I am very interested to hear your opinion. Do you support Kickl or are you against him? And your favorite salaries in Austria? The Austrian Statistics Office has published fresh data on salaries in a country, which showed significant differences in pay depending on the industry and the worker's profile. In 2022, the average gross salary in the private sector was 17.5 euros per hour. However, in the energy sector, this figure has soared to 27 euros, making this area the highest paying. In contrast, workers in the hotel and restaurant sectors earn only 10 to 11 euros per hour. Interestingly, the level of education also significantly affects earnings. Workers with higher education earn almost twice as much as those without higher education, illustrating the importance of qualifications and obtaining an education. Furthermore, it should be noted that the gender pay gap still persists. Women earn less than men in all sectors. The average income for women is only 11.5 euros, which is less than two-thirds of the overall average income in 2022. 14% of workers were low-paid among women. There is also a difference in regional salaries. The highest salary is recorded in Vorarlberg, where earnings amount to 19.5 euros, while in Burgenland this figure is significantly lower, at only 15.5 euros per hour. These data highlight that not only the chosen professions but also the place of residence affect income levels. The Austrian government is at a historic low in trust. Before the elections, the Austrian government decided to conduct a social survey. The government, consisting of a coalition of the Austrian People's Party and the Greens, faced an unprecedented decline in the level of trust among citizens. In August 1923, the Government Trust Index was minus 13.5 points, which is a record low since the index was launched in 2003. Data specialist Johannes Klotz emphasizes that such a sharp rise and fall has had no parallels in the history of Austrian politics. For comparison, the previous government and coalition started with much higher trust ratings. For example, the SP and VP began with 13.5 and 14.5 points. When Sebastian Kurz was in charge in 2017, the party maintained positive trust. Key factors in the decline of trust include not only heated debates over vaccination during the pandemic but also inflation crises. As a result, in April 2023, the trust index reached a record low of -16.3 points. Only after the elections to the European Parliament was the government able to stabilize its position somewhat. Interestingly, although the opposition has not been able to take advantage of the current situation, the FP continues to lead on issues despite low trust in its leader Kickel among a broader audience. This news was from September, prior to the elections. And, as we know, even with low trust in the party leader, the party still won. Austria has finally revealed its budgets for the European Union. In recent years, Austria has significantly changed its positions regarding contributions to the European Union budget. According to the latest data, the average contribution per capita is €124. Austria is no longer among the top 5 leaders in this indicator. Previously, Austria's contributions were significantly higher considering changes in the economic situation and financial policy. For example, compared to Luxembourg, which contributes about €700 per capita, Austria's contribution looks much more modest. Despite this decline, the importance of the Austrian economy for the European Union budget remains significant. Embargoes, changes in agriculture, and migration policy are all factors that continue to influence the country's contribution to the overall financial resources of the European Union. This data once again highlights the dynamics of economic relations within the European Union, as well as Austria's financial stability. Against the backdrop of global problems, cheap Vienna versus expensive Austria, a comparison of real estate prices. Real estate in Austria continues to be a valuable asset. Despite some signs of a slowdown in the market, the cost of housing in the country remains one of the highest in Europe. For example, in recent years, apartments in new buildings in Austria have significantly increased in price. It is worth noting that living in the capital, Vienna, is relatively more affordable. This is explained by the fact that Vienna, despite its popularity and status as a cultural center, offers a wider selection of housing across different price categories for different people. At the same time, rental and purchase prices for apartments in other cities of the country can be significantly higher. According to data published this year, the average price per square meter in Vienna is around €4,600, while in some European capitals, such as Paris and London, this figure can vary and exceed €10,000. Therefore, Vienna still remains an attractive city for real estate investment. Thus, the Austrian real estate market presents interesting opportunities for both local residents and investors, with the potential to earn income from rental or resale. It is undoubtedly worth noting that having ownership of an apartment for a period exceeding 10 years exempts a person or a company from paying the main tax on the resale of the apartment. But if you are not registered or do not live in the apartment, the tax can indeed take a very significant portion of the profit you would make if you bought the apartment at a lower price and sold it for a bit more. The top 10 in-demand vacancies in Austria. There is a noticeable shortage of specialists in technical professions in Austria. According to statistics, in recent years there has been a shortage of engineers in the labor market in this country. Programmers and skilled workers are also in high demand. It is indeed noteworthy that many of the high-paying vacancies are related to these areas of activity. According to the latest data, the salary of an engineer in Austria can reach up to €75,000 per year. However, despite the high salaries, work in some technical professions is not always safe. It is important to note that to attract youth to these fields, the Austrian government and many companies are actively implementing training and internship programs, which create new opportunities for young professionals. So if you are planning to build a career in the technical field and are considering Austria as a place to work, you have the chance not only for good income but also for interesting prospects. In Austria, parents spend an average of about €2,200 annually on their children's education. The highest expenses are observed among students in classes A, X, C, as well as in intermediate and higher vocational schools. The study conducted by the Chamber of Labor showed that education expenses largely depend on the level of schooling. On average, Parents spend about €2,600 on their children's education in high schools, while they spend €2,254 on primary schools. Education expert Elke Lasher notes that the differences in expenses are explained by the high prices of computer and school equipment. Especially for older and younger students, affordable laptops and iPads are often provided by the government. The expenses for general school supplies and textbooks average around €300 per year, and for specialized materials and clothing, where required, it is slightly more than €200. The study also showed that about a third of parents spend approximately €600 on purchasing iPads and laptops for their children. It is important to note that a large portion of expenses occurs at the beginning of the school year, with a second peak in spending observed closer to its end when students participate in excursions and sports events. I have 3 children, and we are currently preparing for the fact that by the end of the year we will have significant expenses for purchasing various equipment for the classroom. Because in Austria, such events are often celebrated during the festive season and are often tied to Christmas, where St. Nicholas is known to distribute presents much like the legendary Grandfather Frost, and parents actually prepare these gifts for St. Nicholas to bring under the tree. In Vienna, there is a real educational problem. The primary school in the 10th district faced a catastrophic shortage of teachers, which negatively impacted the education of children with a migration background. Out of 231 students, only 7 speak German as their native language. This creates serious difficulties not only for educators, but also for the students themselves, most of whom do not initially speak German. The situation is certainly exacerbated by the large number of children who are in refugee status. In the first grade, there are 28 students, and only 1 teacher is responsible for their education. This leads to a lack of additional German language classes and support from specialists to help children with trauma. It is important to note that parents are also unable to help their children with learning, as many of them live in a community where almost no one speaks German. Some parents are unable to read or write in German, and this creates additional barriers in communication between the educational staff and the parents. Thus, the education system in Vienna needs urgent measures to address this problem. Otherwise, not only the students suffer, but also the learning process itself. I can indeed add that this problem really exists, and I often find it quite difficult to read some messages in parent chats. I often communicate with people who came due to the outbreak of hostilities in Ukraine. And it is difficult for everyone. People who had some basic German can still, perhaps, interact with the teachers in some way. But, of course, English is enough, yet it is still very difficult for the children. Unemployment in Vienna. In Austria, the industry has faced serious difficulties. Even against this backdrop, there is a growth in the number of young, innovative companies. According to the AMS Employment Service, the unemployment rate in Vienna is approximately 11.3%. This means that 1 in 10 working-age residents is unemployed. The situation is complicated by approximately a 9.5% increase in the number of unemployed, which is equivalent to 31,500 people. The most vulnerable groups are men and foreigners. However, despite the overall challenges, Vienna is setting records in the opening of new companies. In the first half of 1924, 5,170 new enterprises were registered in the capital, the highest figure since 1993. This growth highlights not only the attraction of fresh ideas, but also a focus on sustainable development. More than half of the new projects have a climate aspect. In Vienna, opportunities for entrepreneurs and startups continue to exist, highlighting the dynamic labor market in times of crisis. I would be very interested to hear your opinion on this matter, and here's why. I am also involved in 2 startups, and one of these startups I registered with the Vienna Business Association. I applied for funding. This money is free, it does not need to be repaid. It is funding for a startup. But at the same time, I have to report on them somehow and attend several events. I would like to make a video on this topic. I would like to show step-by-step process of applying for government subsidies for a startup. So, please, if you have a startup or you are interested in obtaining funding, make sure to write to me or leave a comment. In the second quarter of 2024, rent continues to rise in Austria, causing concern among many households. According to the data from the Statistical Office, the average monthly rent for housing with a primary residence is about 10 euros per square meter. In Vienna, this figure is more than twice as high as the national average. Over the year, rental prices have increased by 5.5%, which significantly exceeds the overall inflation rate, which, by the way, currently stands at 2.4%. This is the lowest figure in the last 3 years. The average monthly rent has reached approximately 649 euros. The operational expenses amounted to 164 euros. It should be added that operational expenses refer to utility payments that are not included in the rent. They are often present in the rental agreement, or they may be included in the contract. But that's a separate topic. If you're interested, I can again record an informational video about it. The net rent, excluding operating expenses, amounted to 487 euros, having increased by 4.5%. Interestingly, more than 75% of the 4 million housing units in the country have a balcony, loggia, or garden. However, the situation is different in Vienna. Only 54% of residential units have open areas for home lots. The issue of rent, combined with rising operational costs, continues to remain on the agenda, and it certainly raises concerns among the residents of the capital. Here, I would again ask you to write in the comments how interesting you find this, because one of my good friends told me that she rented a garden. Yes, in Austria, you can rent a garden and take care of it. This is urban land that can be cultivated to grow cucumbers and tomatoes. If you are interested in this topic, again, let me know. I will make a separate video about it. It's interesting. Since Sep 2, the climate bonus has been paid out in Austria. Many citizens have already felt its impact on their accounts. I received it too. However, again, this is a topic for discussion. Various members of the ruling party are raising questions about the fairness of the distribution of this payment in September before the elections, especially for asylum seekers. The climate bonus is funded by a tax on CO2 emissions, which is levied on various sources, including heating and transportation. Asylum seekers, who also do not invest their own funds in this tax, receive this bonus. And this is considered unfair. Party members emphasize that having such a system could attract even more people. According to the party, this is unacceptable. Again, they state that it is necessary to review the climate bonus program, excluding those who do not participate in paying that tax, which is coming back. I made a separate video on the topic of the climate bonus. Please watch it here, at the link. Thus, the discussion around the climate bonus in Austria is not only about the economy, but also about fairness in social welfare as a whole. Consumer rights advocates from the Upper Austria Chamber of Labor conducted an inspection of fresh fruits and vegetables in supermarkets. The results were shocking. Spoiled products were found in every checked chain. Given the high prices in the country, it is especially unpleasant for customers to encounter spoiled fruits and vegetables after purchase, as mold not only spoils the appearance of products, but can also be potentially harmful to health. The call to retailers is as follows. Must improve quality control in stores. Customers have the right to receive impeccable products for their money. If you have found such a spoiled product, you can file a complaint and make claims and request a replacement. In the context of rapidly rising food prices, the issue of quality becomes particularly relevant for Austrian consumers. I must say that I often find spoiled products in supermarkets, and yes, it is indeed a problem. A few words about the popular form of employment in Austria. Marginal employment. This type of part-time work allows individuals to earn up to 518 euros per month without paying income tax and social insurance contributions. This makes marginal employment an attractive option for students or those who want to earn a little extra on the side. The advantage of this form of employment is that the gross salary is equal to the net salary. However, it is important to remember that you do not have full social insurance. In this case, nevertheless, the employer is obliged to provide you with accident insurance. It is also good to be aware that even with such employment, you are entitled to vacation and sick leave. If you plan to work marginally, it is important to consider the issue of health insurance. Despite the absence of mandatory contributions, having insurance is a guarantee of your safety and health. Such job vacancies can be found just like any others. It is enough to actively search for suitable offers on various websites like Willhaben or jobs.at. Thus, the Gearing Figure Guide represents a flexible and convenient form of marginal employment for those seeking additional income without excessive tax obligations. This topic can be discussed endlessly because a company can hire as many people as it wants for marginal employment, but there is a certain limit on the total salary paid to such employees. This is to ensure that no company or restaurant can hire 100 people and pay them each 500 euros without paying taxes. In other words, there must be a ceiling on the total amount paid. Plus, this does not exclude various requests for employee registration, meaning that one can easily incur a fine if all important documents are not prepared. Well then, inadequate work won't actually help a person survive on 500 euros a month. Because if you take on 2 to 3 jobs, your tax base exceeds 500 euros and you automatically have to pay for health insurance and social contributions. Therefore, this topic is somewhat underexplored in this news, but what happened is that the threshold for earning this insignificant salary for performing minor work has been raised to 514 euros. Austria's Minister of Finance Magnus Brunner has advocated for the abolition of the duty-free limit of 150 euros concerning the import of goods from outside the Eurozone. This was a reaction to the sharp increase in parcel volumes from China, as it became known. The current rules exempt goods valued at less than 150 euros from duties, and this has led to frequent abuses. Authorities are increasingly recording cases of undervaluation of goods in invoices, which creates an advantage for such companies and violates the principles of fair trade. In response to this problem, the European Commission proposed to amend the legislation in electronic commerce, including the abolition of customs benefits and the imposition of new responsibilities on online platforms for the collection of customs duties and VAT. However, Brunner believes that the proposed measures are not fast enough, and he advocates for more immediate actions, rather than waiting for the planned implementation of the new EU customs data platform in the 28th year. He demands the swift adoption of regulations that will help protect the single European market and ensure equal conditions for all participants. This statement emphasizes the importance of adapting tax and customs legislation to the modern realities of the market and the significant growth of e-commerce. In the fourth quarter of 2023, the Austrian Ministry of Climate invested nearly 1.6 million euros in advertising campaigns, as reported in a review published in the magazine Zur Zeit. The main recipients of the subsidies were the radio stations EO3 and Kronenhit. The television channel ORF2 received 145,000 euros, Kronen Zeitung 71,000 euros, and ORF2 62,000 euros. Among print media, the largest funding went to the newspaper The Standard, which received 52,000 euros for print and advertising products, 37,000 euros for advertising on their website, which shows serious support from the former government for major media platforms in the context of popularizing environmental initiatives. The Ministry of Climate also actively used social media for its advertising campaigns. The expenses for advertising on Facebook and Instagram amounted to nearly 101,000 euros, while advertising on Google and YouTube added another 77,000 euros. The total expenditure for promoting eco-campaigns reached 1.5 million euros. This underscores the importance of modern digital channels and inform the public about climate policy. However, It should be added that because the previous government was in coalition with the Greens, these programs were, of course, significantly developed and funded. 2 weeks ago, I received a letter from the management of my district stating that they are asking me, as a resident of this area, about any initiatives I would like to implement within my district. In other words, they are looking for proactive individuals who can offer something. Some eco-parking areas, some sports events, on the grass. Money is allocated for this. It is included in the budget for the next year and distributed. Changes in the traditions of kindergartens in Vienna have sparked heated discussions. Now in kindergartens, the familiar symbols on coat hooks, such as houses, apples, and mushrooms, which help children navigate and identify their belongings, are being removed. This decision was made as part of the effort to prevent possible discrimination among children. It is unclear how an apple will be better than the sun. According to representatives of the management body MA10, the new labeling structure suggests the use of mixed forms of photographs and other ideas. This should give children the opportunity to choose symbols with which they can identify. Despite good intentions, it resembles censorship, madness that is actively discussed in society. This emphasizes how changes in the education system can reflect broader social transformations in society. And of course, the question remains as to how well these innovations fit into the everyday life of Austrian families. In my opinion, it's complete nonsense. There are more important issues that need to be addressed. The metallurgical and metalworking industries in Austria are experiencing a serious decline. In the first half of 2024, production decreased by 10%. About 50% of the 200 companies reported a negative financial result. This statement was made by Gabriel Felbermayr, the director of the Institute of Economic Research, who points out that the current economic problems, including the decline in GDP, have arisen as a result of internal decisions. According to the latest data from the Association of Metallurgical Industry, the volume of incoming orders has decreased by 4%, which has already led to the reduction of 4,000 jobs. Every second company has been forced to cut staff. This year, a further deterioration of the situation is expected, with a forecast of a 9% decrease in production in the second half of the year. This is alarming news for the Austrian economy, where wage growth significantly outpaces that of other countries. In Austria, it grew by 8.9%, which is more than double the average in the European Union. Felbermayr also emphasizes that the current recession and negative economic factors cannot be attributed solely to the influence of Europe. Issues such as the coronavirus have particularly hit the Austrian tourism sector hard, and supply chains have been disrupted due to the country's geographical location. Currently, the debt stands at about 80% of GDP. Without the necessary measures for industrial recovery, further economic growth is in question. The number of coronavirus cases is rising in Vienna. What can I say? In September, my wife and I contracted the coronavirus. It was unexpected. Who would have thought? An increase in COVID-19 cases has been recorded in Vienna. This raises concerns for officials. The number of coronavirus cases rose from 1,600 to 1,800. Experts reflect that, depending on the weather, the peak of illness may occur in 4 to 6 weeks. Currently, there are 40 patients in the hospitals of Vienna, one of whom is in intensive care. Doctors warn that the coronavirus can exacerbate chronic diseases, making it especially dangerous for vulnerable groups in the population. Despite the rise in infection rates, mandatory mask wearing is not currently being discussed. The mayor of Vienna, Michael Ludwig, recommends that residents wear masks in crowded places, such as public transport. According to specialists, some new antiviral medications are expected to be released soon. Germany is tightening border controls with a close eye on Austria. Against the backdrop of stricter migration policies in Germany, the situation at Austria's borders is becoming relevant. Starting from September 16th, Germany will introduce controls at all its land borders, which will last for 6 months. This measure is aimed at limiting unauthorized entries. In recent months, according to Germany's Ministry of Internal Affairs, more than 30,000 people have been returned. Austrian Interior Minister Gerhard Kahner stated that the country will not accept migrants who have been denied asylum in Germany. He noted that Austria has no room for maneuver. This underscores Austria's rigidity on migration issues and its unwillingness to take responsibility for decisions made by the neighboring country. Thus, Austria's migration policy remains strict, which may influence migration flows and the overall situation in the European region, especially with the selection of a new ruling party. Austria continues to face serious dependence from Russian gas, which creates geopolitical risks, especially in light of the current events in Ukraine. According to Gabriel Falber, the director of the Austrian Institute of Economic Research, in December 1923, 98% of the gas imported into the country came specifically from Russia. Throughout 1923, this figure varied from 43 to 90%, a take-or-pay long-term contract between the Austrian supplier of the MFAO and Gazprom obligates Austria to purchase certain volumes of gas until 2040. However, the situation may change drastically. The transit agreement between Ukraine and Russia is set to expire at the end of the year, and President Zelensky has already announced that it will not be extended. This places Austria on the brink of an energy crisis, as the country will need to seek alternative supply sources during the winter period. Falbermeier claims that Austrian gas storage facilities are currently full, and alternative supply routes are available. However, a short-term increase in gas prices by 20 to 25% is expected due to rising costs associated with transitioning to new sources. In particular, Austria is considering supplies from Norway, as well as liquefied natural gas and gas from North Africa. Such a change could provide the country with greater independence and reduce risks associated with dependence on Russian gas. However, this transition requires significant investment in infrastructure and may raise energy costs for both businesses and households. In the long term, however, this may enhance the reliability of energy supplies and the country's resilience to geopolitical threats. The problem of foreign crime: 14,000 crimes over 5 years. At a press conference dedicated to the upcoming elections for the National Council, the Secretary General of the Freedom Party of Austria, Christian Hafenecker, and National Council member Susanne Frost discussed what they consider an unconventional issue of crime among foreigners in the country. In just the last 5 years, an astonishing number of 614 criminal cases related to foreigners have been registered in Austria. This means that, on average, 340 charges were brought each day. It should be noted that about 5,000 foreigners have been convicted of serious crimes. This, of course, raises serious concerns among the authorities. According to the information, the largest group of suspects currently consists of individuals from Turkey, followed by Afghans and Syrians. According to Hoffenker, a stricter policy is required regarding the provision of asylum. He cites Sweden as an example where the process of obtaining citizenship has become more complex, which may reduce the influx of migrants. Thus, there is currently an active discussion in Austria about the necessity of reforms in the field of migration policy. According to a recent report on the housing market in Vienna from Otto and Mobilen, there is a noticeable decrease in transaction volumes of 7.5% for the first half of 2024, amounting to 1.2 billion euros. Interestingly, the number of real estate sales remained at 3,305 transactions, which indicates that there is a sustained demand for more affordable apartments and villas. The sale price of apartments was less than 250,000 euros. Despite a decrease in the area of higher quality houses and villas, the volume of transactions increased by 26% and reached 239 million euros. This shows that interest from buyers is increasingly present, but is mainly concentrated in the more affordable segment. According to experts, prolonged price stagnation indicates the presence of uncertainty in the market. It is indeed important to remember that the demand for rental properties remains high, indicating that there will be a supply shortage in the future. In this situation, it may be a good time for buyers to invest in real estate. I am introducing a new section, Cooler. Cocaine in a wheelchair. A notable incident occurred in September at Schwechat Airport in Austria. a 39-year-old Venezuelan, was arrested for attempting to smuggle 14 kilograms of cocaine hidden in a wheelchair. The man arrived from Brazil and, although having detailed medical documents, raised suspicions with the police. Specially trained dogs played a key role in the investigation. They discovered a stash of drugs that was hidden in an electric wheelchair. The estimated market value of the seized drugs was about $1.5 million. During the interrogation, it became known that the man did not need a wheelchair and used it as a disguise for smuggling. This emphasizes that modern methods, including service animals, are used in the fight against drugs in Austria. The arrested individual has been transferred to prison and the case is still under investigation. I will tell you what happened in October in the next video.